Thank you. Picking up on that, I'd quite like to raise a question as well, Helen Joyce, because one of the passages in your output that many people have exhibited to me has been a couple of things that you've said in the recent past about trans people. And you have said that we need to keep down and control the number of people who transition. And you've also said that every single person who transitions is a problem in a sane world. Now, can you see why that might be interpreted as something very serious?
I can see why if you take it out of context and you want to. But I'm going to explain to you what I actually said and why I stand by those exact words. So in the book, I explain how social contagions work and how in particular they work among teenage children and in particular teenage girls. So one of the bits of evidence for the fact that this is a social contagion is the way that it's moved towards being about teenage girls. So before 2010, gender clinics almost only saw very little boys, but mostly middle-aged men. And then after 2010, it started being overwhelmingly teenage girls. That's now all over the world. Everywhere there are gender clinics, which is basically the Anglosphere and, you know, some countries that are heavily influenced by English or American, I should say, culture. It's mostly girls. So when you have a social contagion, other examples are, you know, Charcot's hysteria, cutting, anorexia, bulimia, and so on. Numbers increase very fast and then they die down again, but they don't ever go back to where they were. And when you look at something that's a social contagion, you would think, well, I want to limit the numbers. I want to sort of, you know, turn the peak of this social contagion as fast as possible and suck as few people into it as possible. So if you believe, as I do, that this is a social contagion among teenage kids, then naturally, of course, you want to limit the spread. You want as few people as possible caught up in it. So that's part of it. The second bit is that this belief system is a particularly difficult one to accommodate. So somebody who's, you know, an Anglican, it's not very hard to accommodate them in society. But somebody who believes that what sex you say you are should influence how you move around the world, that's a very hard person to accommodate. Because they're going to be somebody who thinks that they can use facilities that are intended for the opposite sex. They're going to be a man who thinks they can go into the women's changing rooms, a man who thinks they can compete in women's sports and so on. Every one of those people causes enormous difficulties for a very, very large number of people. So one man in a large business who thinks he has the right to use the women's toilets makes the women's toilets an uncomfortable place for all the women. So yes, the fewer people who believe that what you believe about yourself is more important than the actual sex you are, the better for the rest of us. And every one of those people is a very big problem for us. This is an ideology that's spreading that is very, very, very difficult to accommodate and causes a lot of harm to other people's human rights. So there you go, that's what I said.